Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's video, we went and saw Warfare, which is the new A24 film that basically goes in depth on one of the missions that happened during the Iraq War. And so we're going to talk about non-spoiler stuff first, and then we're going to give the movie a rating, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about some spoilers, which honestly, the spoiler section is going to be pretty quick because um, on a non-spoiler level, this movie, yes, it covers, this event that happened during the war, um, but there's not a lot that happens. It is an hour and a half movie, we'll say that, but the first 30 minutes or so, the movie's pretty quiet. Um, you're really trying to feel like you're in this hostile environment with these troops, and you're just waiting for something to happen. I know I leaned over to Sarah probably about 20 minutes into the movie, and I was like, something's about to happen. But then even like another 10 minutes went by and before something actually happened and things were getting crazy. So uh it really kind of keeps you on the edge just like the soldiers would be, in the town where they're stationed. But then, as you can see in the trailer, eventually bullets start flying, and then, we kind of head towards the middle and end of the film. So what did I think of the film? This film, I would say it probably hits differently for those that are part of the armed forces. And the reason why I say that is because, you see all these different war pictures, even ones that are still true stories. And I feel like this story didn't have nearly as much going on as a lot of other ones. Yes, there are definitely some things where it's like, well, if you were there, wouldn't you be terrified and scared and heart pounding? Of course. Absolutely. But in comparison to some other films, it just wasn't quite there. And so I think they did a good job with what they were trying to accomplish, but there wasn't quite enough substance there. And I know, Sarah, you and I talked about some of the things we would add, to the movie. So I'm gonna let you cover some of those.
Yeah, so I think the best way I've found to put how I feel about this movie into words is what they were covering was great, but it almost felt like the middle of a season of a TV show where you're missing the beginning couple episodes and you're missing the ending couple episodes. And so it just feels incomplete. Like it was a great portion of a story, but there wasn't enough character development and there wasn't enough what happens next. Like it cuts so abruptly at the end. Um, those are the two main things that I think could really add to this film. And being that it's only an hour and a half, they had plenty of film time to make this, say a 2 hour film or an hour 45 or something, just to give you a little bit more to really feel for these guys because you feel for them because you know that the stuff's scary, but you don't know them on a personal level. They tried to accomplish it at the beginning, but I feel like it just wasn't enough to really understand who these people are.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a spoiler. So the only setup that you get for this movie is a small little blurb in the beginning that explains why they're there. And it's like two sentences. And so we really, as an audience member, don't really understand, why are they there? Are they looking for somebody? Is this just them being stationed somewhere? There's a lot of questions about the mission itself. And I think from the writing perspective, I think what ends up happening is because this movie was made by the people that were there. And, we see at the end, them and the crew, and then, you see the side by side comparisons of who was who and all that good stuff. They were there. And so what I think gets lost in translation to the audience at times is, when they watch the film or when they read the script, they know all the other things that were happening. And so some of that stuff gets forgotten to be put on paper or on film. And so it's a little bit harder as an audience member to understand a bit more of the complexities aside from this is war, it's intense, and this is a scary situation. So I feel like I wish I knew a little bit more about that, especially since for myself, I grew up, I was super young, during this time. It would have been nice to know a little bit more of what was happening, or just I guess in a sense paint the picture a little bit more of it being the Iraq War. Because if I hadn't known that, I could have seen this as any point in time during that war, or even going on right now, just because there's no setting the stage of the time frame aside from them saying, hey, this is this day and this year. There's nothing that really shows us what we're seeing in a way.
Yeah, I think you pointing out of how the directors really knew all the background stuff that was going on and maybe kind of missing putting some of that background information in for the audience. I think that really hits the nail on the head right there.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that this is a bad war movie by any means. By any means. I do think this is one that's probably in like the middle of the pack from the ones that I've seen. But here's the thing. This is made by A24, and A24 just came out with Civil War not too long ago, which is another war film. It's a fiction war film, of course, so they get to have a little bit more liberty with a lot of the different things that they can do with that. But I feel like the way the intensity that movie was filmed was way better. And the idea of what's intense is the same in both films as far as it's a war zone, bullets are flying, things are crazy. And I feel like that movie did a lot better job than this one. Um, one of the, I don't want to say it because it's a spoiler, but I will say there because you know it's real, that's why you fear for these people. Like you fear for their lives. If this was a fictional story, I feel like there'd be little to no attachment to the film because of a certain aspect of it, and we'll talk about that more in the spoilers. But if you're pulled in thinking, "Oh my God, he's insensitive for what he just said," just wait till we get to the spoilers and we can talk about that a bit more. But there's a big piece here that I think is missing from the war film genre, that would pull you in a bit more. So, is there anything else that you want to say about it with non-spoilers?
Um, I feel like we're ready for ratings. I think we covered it enough.
Okay, so based on the fact that, I do think this is a good movie, at least above average. I don't think it, like, if I were to watch a war picture, I don't think this is one that I would go back to because there's so many other ones that are in this realm that are better than this movie. Like, Saving Private Ryan or Act of Valor. I like that movie a lot better too. And that was based on real events as well. Well, both of those were. But I'm probably sitting at a 7. I think this movie is above average. I don't think it's absolutely fantastic by any means because I think there's some flaws within the writing and the filming of it that just didn't do it for me as far as keeping me engaged. I will say, watching the film, I kept thinking, "Oh, we have some small things happening here. We're gonna get it here towards the end. Like it's gonna get really good. It's gonna get intense." And unfortunately, the intensity stays about the same the whole way because we don't have that extra piece. And we'll talk about that in a minute. What's your rating?
I think I'm gonna land at a 6 for this one. I've had a really hard time because I feel like because it's based on true events and that the people there were a part of it, that's really making me want to pull it higher than what I feel the movie actually is. Because I feel for these people, but at the same time, the whole movie, you're just constantly waiting for something to happen. And I get that that's, partially what real Warzone is like, but at the same time, this isn't a documentary. This is supposed to be somewhat a form of entertainment, right? So you're supposed to have more things to focus on than just sitting and waiting. And I feel like if they had pulled in either some stuff from the beginning, to make you feel for these characters a little bit more, aside from knowing that they're based on real people, or some stuff at the end to kind of make it feel less of a sudden finish of the film, or even some stuff in between because, so many times they're talking on the comms, and if you don't know military speak, you really have no idea what these people are talking about or what they're saying. And you can kind of piece some things together, but to have not really an idea of what's going on for so much of the film, it's really pulling me down. And so I'm at a 6. It had such great potential. I was really looking forward to it, but it just didn't hit the way I think it should have.
I would say I agree and disagree on some of the points. The one thing that I would say that I probably disagree on is my guess is that A24 had a lot of success with Civil War. And I bet they took those profits and they said, "Hey, we want you to tell your story. And we want you to um, put the intensity level from what you remember. We want it to sound like from what you remember, and they don't want Hollywood to dip their toes into anything." And so I feel like with that authenticity, that's what really drives the film. But like kind of between the two things that we're saying here is there's not the substance there that really pulls somebody from the outside or the average person like ourselves looking in that pulls us more to these characters. I feel like honestly, if if they didn't have the actors that we recognize playing these roles, if they were just like startup actors, probably wouldn't draw nearly as many people to see it. I'm sure there's people going because of what's his name from Stranger Things. Um, there's people that want to go see Joseph Quinn. There's people that want to go see Will Poulter. Let's see. I feel like there's at least one more that I recognize, but I'm not getting any right off the bat. But anyways, if like we said, for me, if they would have had some sort of like briefing in the beginning that tells us why they're there, like it's the war room where they're telling the soldiers like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and us as the audience member could, connect with that and, know why we're there, that would have been a lot helpful, or a lot more helpful, I should say.
I have a question for you.
What's up?
How much time do you think this movie spans over?
Based on what we saw, I would say it was over like well, based on what happened in the beginning, I could see it being a week or a month, but from what we saw, like the main part of it, like a day, overnight.
That's what I was thinking too, which is just crazy to me because to your point of not wanting Hollywood to dip into it and stuff, I'm sure that those teams were there for more than a day, even if they had to leave for medical and come back some other time, or what were they doing leading up to that point? And I think that's kind of more what I'm trying to get at is even if you don't want to Hollywood dies it, I feel like there's still more that they could have told.
Yeah. So, well, also, when we went to the drive-in, we could not see anything in the first like 5 to 10 minutes because it was so dark. Um, Dark for the film and light for outside. So we didn't really get to see the first 5 minutes. But what I can tell you is that the first 5 minutes, because I, did some reading to find out what was going on. The first 5 minutes is just setting up where they're at. Like they're going to the place. They're not talking about it, they're just going there. So um, it doesn't fulfill that writing piece that we are talking about, where we get to know a little bit more about them. And also, like, okay, let's go to spoilers so we can start talking about some of the spoiler stuff and give some substance here. So Sarah gave it a 6, I gave it a 7. We're moving on to spoilers. So I want to read the synopsis real quick from IMDb So we kind of understand what's going on. It says a platoon of Navy SEALs embark on a dangerous mission in Ramadi, Iraq, with the chaos and brotherhood of war retold through their memories of the event. So this is retold by the soldiers themselves. And like I said, I'm pretty sure even one or two of them was part of the writing and directing. Sorry. Let's see, Alex Garland, Ray Mendoza. Let's see if we see any. Yeah, Ray is um the dude that was in charge of the initial group. So that character is the one that the director is.
He's
Um,
also a writer. They both wrote and directed.
right. And I believe the other guy is the guy that did Civil War, if I'm not mistaken. Because that's where they kind of had that connection piece of, Civil War was like all this, how do we translate it kind of a thing. But anyways, so the beginning of the film, we're told, that they're going there from a blurb, and the blurb tells us the day and the day and the year. They head over to this house. They set up station in the house, and then we get like another 25 minutes or so of them in the house watching people on the street. Now I get it. This is kind of understanding what it's like to be them here in this role. So, like, we see the sniper guy looking through a small hole, watching the people in the street. We got some other guys that are downstairs that are watching, the ground floor. We got troops up top in the second floor. I feel like some of them are like rotating just to keep things fresh between the rooms. And we really don't get a whole lot of like any of their personal lives, but we do get a lot of the sniper guy basically going through and talking about the different things that he's noticing on the street, what would be a concern. Like we see him watching certain guys and he's like, this person, this color shirt, this color pants, somewhat suspicious, and we're seeing all these different things. And eventually, what leads up to is they hear these people, the Iraqis saying, and I forget what the word is in their language, but it's basically get off the street, it's gonna go down, and that's what the U.S. soldiers are picking up on, and so they're concerned. One of There's a car that pulls up, four of them get out, and the U.S. soldier sees that one of them has a weapon, and so they know, yes, it's absolutely we are in trouble. Um, they're gonna fire upon us probably pretty soon, and one of them, like the sniper, is watching one of them, and he, I guess, was supposed to get a shot off, which I didn't quite understand because, you know, yes, they're anticipating that it's going to happen, but it makes me wonder, like, would you really fire the shot to get things going and then, like, agitate the situation? But maybe it's better to shoot first and then not be
I
shot
think they
at? I
were,
don't know.
I think he was wanting to hit the guy that had the gun.
Right.
That way he couldn't shoot the gun.
Hmm.
But he wasn't able to get the shot.
Right. So he didn't get the
It's not that
shot
he
off.
missed, so he didn't start the fire. He didn't have enough time to even do it.
Right. So just like us as the audience, and I was saying, something's going to happen. It's coming. Eventually, we see a grenade come in through that small hole, and it blows up, and a couple of people get injured from it really badly. And then this is the majority of the rest of the film. Yes, we see, some of the soldiers shooting towards the enemy, and we see the enemy shooting towards the soldiers. But here's the kicker. I think we saw one person die in the whole film, and I think that was a US soldier. So we don't see any of the enemy die. It's kind of implied, maybe, from like eventually they bring in the tanks and the tanks shoot towards the buildings, but we never see anybody die. And quite honestly, because they're shooting at like empty buildings, I could assume that they're not hitting anything. They're just putting down cover fire. So I feel like it really pulls out an element of these war films to not see that kind of a thing. Is this movie rated R?
It is. I just checked.
Okay, so this movie is rated R for probably the language, because they swear a lot, but also because you're seeing the injuries to the U.S. soldiers. Both of them, their legs are pretty darn bad. They're screaming and hollering because the pain is so bad. Some of the things that they do to try to prevent the bleeding is pretty gruesome. Like the guy takes gauze and like shoves it in the dude's leg to try to prevent more blood loss. And that's the majority of the film is that we're seeing them. It's more of an analysis of the emotions during war, if you were to ask me. It's what are these soldiers going through? What are they feeling? How are they reacting to this stuff? Because one of the guys in charge, eventually he kind of like shuts down. What's it? This is Will Poulter's character, Eric. He's supposed to be the dude in charge, giving orders, but there's even a point in time here where, like, they're calling for help. A tank comes in, and as they're trying to put people into the tank, the enemy fires an RPG and disrupts that, and so a separate group has to come in to try to save the U.S. soldiers.
And it's that
And when
event that messed up the two guys' legs.
Yeah, that was the event that messed up the two guys' legs. I don't think the grenade did a whole lot to the group,
The
aside from
grenade,
scaring them.
yeah, the grenade hit one guy not in like a devastating kind of way. It almost seemed like it was just his fingers that were messed up, but being that he's a sniper, you really need your fingers. Then it
It was
also
his
seemed like he
fingers
may have
and
had like an injury in his like armpit area.
yeah,
And that's what the first tank was there was to take him away because he was too injured to continue fighting. And then, so that first tank kind of got ambushed, and so that's why the second bombing or RPG or whatever it was happened, right? And then that's how the two guys' legs got really messed up was from that.
right. And this was an interesting part of the film for me because, that happens, and just like over there, I'm sure your hearing gets all messed up. And so the audio was a little different. It was muffled. Um, Even some of the gunshots, really sounded muffled from the returning fire and stuff. And so I I really like that detail. Um, but at the same time, there's not a lot that's going on. Because eventually the people that were going to the tank, the people in the house, they had to come out. They had to bring them back into the house to, have some sort of cover. And then more U.S. military came in to try to help them. And this is the part where the Eric character is like shut down. He even tells this new commander, like, dude, you're in charge. I'm messed up. I can't give, educated decisions right now based on what's happening. You got to take over. And so this new guy, he takes over, and then they call for more tanks to come in. And when they come in, start firing because when the first tank came in, it didn't do anything. It just came in, it lowered the ramp, and then they were expected to put the person inside. I don't know why they weren't, doing some sort of cover fire with the tank. I mean, of course, I don't know military protocol, but it did seem kind of weird that that didn't happen. But now that we have two tanks coming in and they are laying down that cover fire, we are able to get, people into these tanks and start heading off. One of the things that I said during the movie was, those dudes are in pain, and I know in the military they carry morphine for those situations. But it wasn't for like another 5 or 10 minutes of them screaming that they actually did get out the morphine. I was kind of surprised they didn't try to do that right away. Um, but eventually they send some people up on the roof to do some cover fire. Like I said, they get into the tanks. Eventually, everybody gets into the tanks because the tanks are firing some heavy fire on the buildings. Again, we don't really see any of the enemy here in this shot. We just see them shooting buildings, um, which takes away some of that element of um, of being safe. So I don't know. And then when they drive off in the tank, everything's great, mission's over. Movie cuts to seeing how the actors compared to the real life people. We see a lot of that film, and then the movie's done. So the mission is super short. It is, we get there, one guy gets minorly injured, we gotta send him away. That gets compromised. We bring in a second group, we leave. The movie's over. And there's not a lot of, even though there is a lot of firing back, we never really see the soldiers actually firing at people. It's just we see them stand up. It's as if standing in front of them and we see them, peppering the different rooftops and whatnot because there's a whole bunch of enemies all around them. And so I think that really pulled me out as a viewer. It didn't show the danger to the troops aside from I know they're there, but we don't see them, so it's kind of hard to make that connection, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is we didn't see them shoot us, and we didn't see us shoot them either. Like we shot at them, but we never actually saw anybody go down.
Yeah, like it walking away from this film, it was like, okay, so in this entire event, what happened was is like from what I understand, one US soldier died, two two got injured. But then we saw nothing from the enemy. Like, did the enemy really not have any casualties? Because as soon as the US troops left, the enemy came out and walked in the streets as if everything was fine. Like they were going back to their normal lives. They were happy that they drove out the Americans from their town, essentially. Um, I think you raise a good point in our non-spoiler section where maybe this should have been a show. And this could have been an episode of it. And then we see more about the war itself. I feel like with the way it was presented on film, there just wasn't enough to fully understand the situation aside from the fact that it's war and it's horrific.
Yeah. And if they don't have enough substance for a full TV season or mini season or whatever you want to call it, or they don't want to go that route because A24, as far as I know, doesn't do TV, they only do movies. Um, I still think they could have incorporated more to make the movie longer because an hour and a half is, by today's standards, it's getting to be kind of a short movie.
Yeah. Was there any other like big points in the film that you think are worth mentioning? Like I said, we had our guys get injured. The main focus of the film is being there and seeing like basically the horror and the emotional roller coaster that they have to go through and at the same time that they have to suppress because uh you know, with these people, like, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, thinking, like, oh my God, I have a family back at home. I'm in this moment. This could be it. And that's like the big emotional roller coaster that I'm sure a ton of them have in the back of their mind, but they have to turn that off because they got to get out of there. And so, us as the audience, really, I think what we're getting from this film is seeing how they deal with that and how they react to the different circumstances, as
Yeah.
opposed to seeing a movie where, it's the US military going in. This is kind of like a USA type film where they're taking out the enemy. That's not what you're getting. It's basically a mission that went poorly for the United States. And so, it draws us into maybe making some connections to it's not perfect. It's not that the US goes in every single time and nobody gets hurt or injured every single time. This is real and they're trying to make more awareness of it and also, share the stories of these people that are now affected for the rest of their life. Because I'm pretty sure one of them they showed at the end of the film is now in a wheelchair because
And
of what they
missing
went
half a
through.
leg.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I feel like that covers it pretty good. The only really minor thing I think I would maybe add is just that we do see some like stress relief or comedic relief type moments that are really minor just from the troops trying to keep their spirits up. Like when the guy doesn't make the shot for trying to hit the other when our sniper sees the enemy carrying a gun and doesn't make that shot, he gets called weak by his partners because they're trying to tease him for it. So there's just a couple little things here or there like that. So it's not 100% serious, but it's like 95% there.
yeah. And with this film, I would like to say, thank you to our troops for doing all of this. I mean, that it is very intense. It is not easy to do that. And, uh, it's because the troops are willing to do that. That's why we get to do these videos and do reviews here on YouTube, right? So,
Yes. Thank you.
um, yeah, thank you to them. So, uh, yeah, that is our review on Warfare. Again, Sarah gave it a 6. I gave it a 7. Um, if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drop us a like if you like the video and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on Warfare. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.